Part 2. Battle on the Lunar Surface. Chapter 5. Dream on the Moon. A.E.U.G, the Lunar Autonomous City. This city, with its unique origin as an observatory base established for the first time on the far side of the Moon, had a distinct identity. Most of its residents were descendants of former observatory base personnel, which was unusual for lunar autonomous city residents. They had a rare desire to return to Earth, driven by their location and environmental conditions preventing them from ever seeing Earth again. Yes, A.E.U.G City stood out among the lunar autonomous city clusters as an exceptionally conservative city. During the Grips War, the A.E.U.G militia, a reserve force organized for the city's defense, served as rear-line forces for the Titans, guarding the colony laser. These residents had lived believing that serving Earth was their duty, so it was only natural for them to join the Titans, who espoused Earth supremacy. As is well known, this battle ended with a narrow victory for the A.E.U.G, and the wounded A.E.U.G militia fleet returned with its soldiers. However, other Titans personnel were among this fleet who had nowhere to go. Kaiser Pinefield, the mayor of A.E.U.G City, accepted these personnel into A.E.U.G City and continuously refused extradition requests from the Earth Federation government, considering them interference in the city's internal affairs. Of course, Pinefield believed that the current Earth Federation government was a puppet regime of the A.E.U.G. Now, A.E.U.G City was the last hope for the remnants of the Titans. Behind this movement was one individual, a man named Mike Saotome. However, his real name and background were entirely different from the data registered with the Earth Federation forces. During the Pazun Rebellion, Saotome had been ordered by Cray to engage in subversive activities against dissidents in the Earth Federation military, those dissatisfied with the current Earth Federation military, and government as well as the lunar autonomous cities. He was not a mobile suit pilot for the instructor corps. He was an intelligence officer who had previously served in the Federation's intelligence division. His background had earned him Cray's trust. Now he was sitting on a bench in the deserted observation area of A.E.U.G City. Nothing but the stars could be seen as usual in the plexiglass observation dome. No one else was around except for Saotome. Since long before, the residents of A.E.U.G City had always refused to look at space, clinging to the simulated blue sky projected on the small dome ceiling of their residential district. In the distance, Saotome's hometown appeared as a small point of light. Side 3. Space colonies floating at the Lagrange point, L2, on the far side of the Moon. Once known as the Principality of Zeon, this colony had renamed itself the Republic, and was now under the firm supervision of the Earth Federation government. Someday, he muttered to himself. Someday, he would bring glory back to his homeland. After the 1-year war, he obtained a military position within the Earth Federation under a false name, hiding in the shadows. His current name belonged to an Eastern soldier who had perished in the 1-year war, serving in a unit that had been completely wiped out. It was ironic that there were remnants of Zeon, so close to a unit that was ostensibly hunting down Zeon remnants. 8 years in hiding. After the 1-year war, the remnants of Zeon had returned to the Earth sphere, taking refuge in the asteroid base Axis. While Haman Karn was the de facto leader, as long as they had Miniva Zabi, the orphaned heir of the Zabi family, Axis remained unchanged as the Principality of Zeon. He was convinced that the day when his homeland would regain its glory was near. To achieve this, expanding this incident would effectively weaken the Federation's military power. Saotome stood up and walked towards the elevator leading to the underground residential district. Various people's thoughts were intertwined in this incident. While they had managed to avoid being directly caught in the explosion at Pazun, several ships from Task Force Alpha and the Lunar Orbit Fleet had suffered damage from the debris caused by the blast. The Lunar Orbit Fleet had docked at the nearest space colonies, Side 2, and was currently undergoing emergency repairs. Adding to their troubles, This fleet had almost exhausted its propellant due to the abrupt maneuvers during the evacuation to avoid the Pizun explosion, and they needed refueling. However, Task Force Alpha had no such luxury. The Earth Federation's Central Command had immediately ordered the pursuit of the new Decides fleet. But due to the evasive maneuvers required to avoid the Pizun explosion debris, Task Force Alpha had to spread out over a vast expanse of space, delaying the time needed to reorganize their fleet formation and giving the new Decides fleet a half-day to a day's head start. The two detached fleets of the main home fleet were not allowed to depart from Penta until they could ascertain the whereabouts of the new Decides. It was March 10th, Universal Century 0088. Castling, huh? Heathrow muttered as he looked at the white and brown chessboard displayed on the monitor in the captain's quarters of the Pegasus 3. He placed a black pawn, moved by the chess software named Sargon 20, in front of the king piece at the edge of the position he had created, with his white pieces. He then pressed the keys on the keyboard to exchange it with the rook piece that had been positioned at the far right end of the board. This special exchange of the king and rook pieces in chess was known as castling. As a result, Heathrow's king was swiftly shifted, replacing its position with that of the rook, finding sanctuary within the quadrilateral wall crafted by the other pieces. So, they abandoned Pizun and fled. The question is, which square did they escape to? Heathrow likened the new Decide strategy to a game of chess. He tried to fit Pizun into the role of the rook and the main new Decides force as the king. The A.E.U.G fleet could be compared to the knight, I suppose. Heathrow contemplated the still untraceable A.E.U.G fleet, considering them as pieces known for their mobility in chess. Just then, the intercom buzzed softly, indicating a visitor. "Captain, it's Lieutenant Mannings. May I come in?" A low voice came through the intercom. "Very well. Come in," Heathrow replied, unlocking the door to his quarters. "I have something I'd like to discuss," Mannings said as he entered. "Of course, please have a seat. I've been quite busy since leaving Pizun, and I was just thinking it's about time we had a leisurely chat." Heathrow offered a chair, and Mannings seated himself while favoring his right leg. "Now, what's on your mind?" "It's a rather personal matter. It may not immediately affect our strategy, but it's about a man who's on the enemy's side." "Oh, that's intriguing. Knowing our enemy's quirks is important, even if it doesn't directly impact our overall strategy. Care for a pick-me-up? It's a potent one from 12 years ago. I got it from the medical bay. A little captain's privilege, you know." Heathrow gestured toward a cabinet in the room. There was a blue bottle of Navy rum. Alcohol was prohibited on military ships, a tradition that remained from the previous century. However, in naval ships of the previous century, there was alcohol stored in locked cabinets called medicine, for seasickness, or sober-up medicine, and the captain typically held the key. This tradition was still followed on space vessels, even in the space age. "No, thank you. I don't drink," Mannings declined. Heathrow looked slightly disappointed at his response. He didn't particularly care for alcohol himself. However, he knew every seasoned subordinate was a drinker, and he had used alcohol to bond with them. But that little initiative of offering a drink was meaningless with Mannings, hence his faint disappointment. "Very well, let's hear it. Tell me about this man on the enemy's side." Mannings began to speak after receiving a tube of tea. "In the previous war, this man was in the same unit as me. You could say he was my comrade. He was an exceptionally sharp-witted man to the point that everyone wondered why he settled for being a mobile suit pilot. His catchphrase was that he wanted to create an independent nation he believed in." "An independent nation? That's quite ambitious. Is he planning to take over a colony or something?" "No. He said it was based on an essay he published in a third-rate political magazine during his student days. It should have been titled True Colonialism. According to him, humans should live on solid ground, and true space colonies capable of declaring autonomy can only exist on celestial bodies other than Earth that have been terraformed and developed to be habitable. Space colonies, being artificial living spaces, can never break free from Earth's control economically or politically because they lack the economic infrastructure to negotiate with Earth as equals as an independent nation. That might be true to some extent. Look at our current landscape. A few colonies have started to become self-sufficient in terms of resource production and energy supply to Earth, using their solar power satellites. And they even supply minerals by mining asteroids that were hauled in. However, these actions wouldn't have a significant impact on the Earth's economy. But the fact that colonies are gradually becoming self-sufficient is noteworthy. Captain, to be frank, as long as that man is on the enemy's side, I believe the new decides are heading for Luna. I see. I had vaguely considered that possibility myself, but what you said has solidified my conviction. I thought that the new decides might be forming an alliance with Side 3 or remnants of Zeon, not just out of anti-Federation sentiment, but the character of that man makes it extremely unlikely. Perhaps we've been deceived by their anti-Federation appeal. No, it's our own fault for simplistically equating anti-Federation with Zeon from the beginning. They're not Zeon. They have a distinct anti-Federation stance. They're anti-Spacenoid. And on top of that, strategically, we've been manipulated quite effectively by the Night. What do you mean? The A.E.U.G fleet. I don't know if Admiral A.E.U.G's rebellion was intentional or not, but thanks to the lunar orbit fleet entering our space, the area around the moon is now defenseless. Moreover, the garrison units of Side 4 have been hit, so the new decides can easily enter Luna. The garrison units of Side 3 can't move either, as they're preparing for possible incursions by Axis's colony occupation forces. It's the homeland of Zeon, after all. Heathrow glanced at the chessboard on the monitor again. Luna. It seemed that bloodshed couldn't be avoided. Lieutenant Mannings, could you tell me more about this man? What's his name? He goes by Tosh Cray. Could you tell me more about this Cray fellow? Having slipped away from Pazoon, the new Decides fleet was now on a direct course for Luna. They were heading south, which was toward the lower side of the moon, using the moon's orbital path as a reference. Meanwhile, the A.E.U.G fleet, which had engaged in battle with the garrison forces of Side 4, had not yet set course. Instead, they remained lurking in the L1 shoal zone to assess the timing of their rendezvous with the new Decides. Currently, they were conducting emergency repairs on their damaged ships. The shoal zone was a sector of space littered with debris from the one-year war and colony construction, where Minovsky particles, though thinner than 8 years ago, still existed at high densities that severely interfered with radar and other electronics. Thus, radar was useless in such an area, and spaceship and mobile suit navigation had to rely on visual observation. It was an ideal space for a fleet to hide. For A.E.U.G, who had firmly decided to join the new Decides, the fleet's destination had always been Luna. Based on the intel from the members of the Instructor Corps who had visited him, their ultimate destination could only be Luna. From the beginning, A.E.U.G's plan was to hide in the shoal zone near the moon to rendezvous with them. While they had anticipated some conflict with the garrison forces of Side 4, losing the 2 cruisers, the Panama and Dortmund, had been a setback. The Panama, especially, even though its primary weapons became inoperative, had bravely shielded the Bull Run before being destroyed. However, fortunately, A.E.U.G himself was unaware that this engagement had relieved some of the burden on the new Decides, who were en route to Luna. Admiral, it appears that Pazoon has been destroyed. A voice came through the intercom in his quarters. The voice belonged to the captain, who was overseeing the emergency repairs on the bridge. Did the pursuit team destroy it? No. It seems to be the work of the new Decides. They escaped, and the new Federation has not yet located them. The term New Federation was a derogatory nickname for the current Earth Federation government. Among the fugitive fleet, there was not a single person who recognized the current Federation government anymore. I see. Can we still not establish contact with them? I've instructed the communication officer to try, but we can't get lasercom sync. I see. Well, it's certain they're headed for Luna. Prioritize the repairs on the damaged ships. A.E.U.G switched off the intercom and let out a heavy sigh. The new Decides likely didn't know of the A.E.U.G fleet's rebellion yet. They had to avoid friendly fire at all costs. March 12, Universal Century 0088. As the new Decides fleet drew closer to Luna, they intensified their alert status. Unaware that the lunar orbital fleet was the main force for capturing Pazoon, they had prepared to confront them. Hey, all the assault teams are on standby, right? Cod asked, pressing his helmet against Cray's. They've been on standby for 15 minutes. We're good. What about the Zwei? Was the tuning completed? Why the sudden interest? Hey, Cray scrutinized Cod's expression behind his helmet. You're itching to get back into combat after so long, aren't you? I can see it on your face. Can you tell? Cod grinned, like a child getting something they desired. It's written all over your face. But brave. You're the leader of the new Decides. As harsh as it may sound, you can't be part of the fray. Losing our leader, even in a 1,000,000 to 1 chance, is not a risk we can take. Do you really think I'll be killed by those spineless new government lackeys? Cod seemed somewhat disappointed. When it comes to combat, you revert to being a foot soldier and forget that you're the leader. That's why. Pish posh. I was never cut out to be an organizer anyway. Strategic thinking isn't my forte. You're more suited for that role, Tosh. That's not true. You have more drive to act than I do. That drive is what our organization needs right now. Brains are easy to find, but drive is innate. Call it leadership or charisma. Brains alone can't direct people. That's why you have to be the leader. I don't want you wasting that ability as just another foot soldier in combat. Cray's words mirrored the image of a CEO of a one-man corporation. If the systematic megacorporations were the Earth Federation forces, then the only way to counter them was either to create an equally large organization or, in a small organization, follow a charismatic leader where everyone rallied towards a common goal. Cray had applied the latter organizational theory to the new Decides. We're reaching lunar orbit, the astronavigator informed Cod via personal communication. That's strange. The lunar orbital fleet should be heading towards us for interception by now. With the Level 1 combat alert status still in place, the new Decides fleet proceeded to the lunar orbit on a shallow angle. Then, a communications officer interrupted. Lieutenant Cod, a communication laser has been performing square searches in this area for a while now. Isn't it the usual offer to surrender? I'm not sure. It's focused on a fairly narrow search area, and the transmissions are irregular. Then it's not a broad area communication. Synchronize with it, Cray interjected. The communication officer worked the panel switches, orienting the directional communication antenna of the Kilimanjaro towards the transmission source. The source is identified in the direction of side 4. It's a text message. I'll read it. We do not consider it brave to follow a puppet government. We are those who believe there is justice within the new Decides. We wish to stand together with you. Where shall we join forces? The comms officer paused, then continued in a louder, clearer voice. From Earth Federation Forces, Admiral Brian A.E.U.G. Admiral A.E.U.G? Cod's face instantly brightened. Saotami's persuasion efforts paid off. We're not alone anymore. Even the usually stoic Cray smiled. Though he feigned composure, he too had been anxious about fighting with just one fleet. 30 minutes later, the new Decides fleet reached the Lunar Orbit Transit Station over A.E.U.G City. This is the new Decides fleet flagship, Kilimanjaro. We request immediate permission to dock. At the Port Authority in the central dome of A.E.U.G City on the lunar surface, the tired young face of a communications officer appeared on the monitor. The middle-aged controller had received word from the mayor about their arrival, but due to the scheduled arrival of a regular communication shuttle, he decided to follow protocol. Please wait for about 20 minutes. We have a regular communication shuttle arriving. Sorry, but we're at full capacity right now, the control officer responded apologetically, but then a man's hand suddenly grabbed his shoulder from behind. Let them dock immediately. We can delay the regular shuttle, the man said, causing the controller to turn around in surprise. Mayor. The controller nodded at the mayor of A.E.U.G City, Kaiser Pinefield, and redirected his attention to the monitor. The young communications officer on the screen was taken aback upon seeing Pinefield's image. Mayor Pinefield, I presume. I'll hand you over to the commander now. The next face on the monitor, a battle-hardened man whose features were largely obscured by a normal suit helmet, knew Decide's leader, Brave Cod. You've done well, the mayor said. Mayor Pinefield, it is we who are eternally grateful for your assistance, replied Cod. Please, I don't deserve your thanks. You are no longer just allies. You are family. We heard of your determination from Cytome. We welcome you from the bottom of our hearts. It's the only thing I can do to make up for the shame of fleeing that battle. During the colony laser battle, Pinefield had taken command of the A.E.U.G City militia. However, just before the battle began, his concerned subordinates forced him back to A.E.U.G City. Regardless of the circumstances, it was essentially seen as desertion in the face of the enemy. He had accepted that disgrace without complaint. He was well aware that he had betrayed his subordinates and the citizens. For him, the new Decide's offer was the last chance to redeem himself for the disgrace he had brought upon himself. He had firmly reminded himself that he must not betray his subordinates and the citizens again, no matter what. Ho, quite the formidable force we have here, isn't it? 4 cruisers, no less. With Admiral A.E.U.G's fleet added to our 6 ships, we'll have a mighty armada at our disposal. Conquering the moon will be a piece of cake, Cod mused in ecstatic delight, as he gazed upon the A.E.U.G's civilian militia ships, docked at the communication station visible from the bridge. Brave, we aren't looking to conquer the moon through sheer force. Besides, the ships here seem a tad outdated. I'd reckon their individual combat capabilities are about 40% of the government ships. Overestimating them could be dangerous, Cray cautioned, pouring cold water on Cod's enthusiasm. Come on, Cray. Victory in battle isn't just about weapons. It's about skill. Besides, from what we heard earlier, Admiral A.E.U.G has brought plenty of new weaponry with him. We have nothing to worry about. A single decisive battle here will likely dispel any discontent among the troops. And then, if we can realize the Lunar City Alliance plan you devised, it'll be a cause for celebration, won't it? The Lunar City Alliance plan, devised by Cray, was a bold one. It aimed to establish independent lunar autonomous cities, which, despite residing in space, had a unique position on the surface of a celestial body with gravity, forming a united nation to counter the Earth Federation government. In a sense, it could be seen as a second coming of Zeon. Truth be told, you're itching for a battle the most, aren't you? Fine, I get it. If you promise not to overdo it, I won't object to you heading out. But never forget that you're the commander here, Cray said, his voice stern yet understanding. Upon hearing this, a childlike grin spread across Cod's face. No worries there. As a little extra, could I get some of those new weapons A.E.U.G is carrying? Are you talking about the Mark V? Yeah, that's it. A capable pilot paired with a mobile suit can potentially alter the course of the war. Remember the feats of Amuro Ray during the 1 year. War? We can do it. If you give them to me, I'll show you what I can do, Cod declared, laughing heartily. On the same day, The new Decide's fleet appeared in lunar orbit. This news was promptly relayed to the pursuing Task Force Alpha. On the other hand, the main Pazoon fleet, which had been on standby for deployment, also set out for the moon. However, at the normal cruising speed, it seemed it would take another 2 days to reach the moon. At Lagrange Point 5, on the opposite side of the moon from L4, floated the asteroid Confado in the vicinity of Side 1 colony cluster there. This small asteroid had served as the principality of Zeon's space fortress Solomon during the 1-year war. Logically, the Federation fleet stationed here should also be dispatched, but they couldn't recklessly leave the asteroid in case the Axis forces made a move. "We sure are cursed with bad luck," Heathrow muttered as he sat in the captain's seat on the bridge of the Pegasus 3. The problem was that the Pegasus 3's ship speed was too fast. Its high performance made it invaluable. The Gundam-type mobile suit pilots assigned to this ship felt the same way. "Captain, we'll be in lunar orbit in another 24 hours, a helmsman announced. "Order all ships in the fleet to begin deceleration. Get Lieutenant Mannings for me. We need to discuss the descent operation. Also, transfer the Mobile Suit Company commanders from each ship over to us," Heathrow instructed. After calling Mannings, Heathrow left his captain's seat and headed for the briefing room. "Captain, to the briefing room," a duty officer bellowed, and the announcement reverberated throughout the bridge. "Our primary objective is to strike the new D-Side's fleet before they can fully deploy," Mannings declared firmly, standing before the assembled mobile suit team commanders in the Pegasus 3's briefing room. "We are approximately 24 hours behind them, an offset that can only be compensated for by a surprise attack. It will be challenging for them to establish defensive perimeters around the fleet, and within Ayers City within this time frame. They won't have the luxury to deploy mass drivers or gun turrets, relying instead on their ships, mobile suits, and Ayers' civilian militia for defensive maneuvers. Given your skill sets, piercing through their sluggish artillery to secure a descent window to Ayers City should be an easy task." A murmur of subdued laughter rippled through the room. "Commander, any news on the movement of the renegade fleet?" Chung Yung asked, raising his hand. "At present, nothing definitive. But based on their trajectory and time needed to recover from engaging the Side 4 forces, they should still be about 24 hours behind us. That fleet was on roughly the same course. Toward Pazoon from our rear. The last known engagement was at Side 4. Most likely, the rebellion and the destruction of Pazoon were not prearranged, so they would have visually confirmed both events. Therefore, the arrival of the renegade fleet is expected to be later than ours. No need to worry. But isn't it possible that the rebellion and the destruction were coordinated?" someone asked. "The probability is low. The new Decides must have planned to hole up at Pazoon to some degree. Well, at least until Seoul had been destroyed by the S Gundam." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room, with heads nodding in agreement. The main fleet expected to arrive in 2 days possesses sufficient power to hold back the renegade fleet, which is also expected to arrive around the same time. However, if both forces engage in an all-out battle, they would be evenly matched. Therefore, it's imperative that we weaken the new D-Side's fleet as much as possible before then. "So we're just clearing the way, huh?" blurted out Roots. He and the other Gundam-type pilots had the same qualifications as the Mobile Suit Company commanders and were attending the mission briefing. "You got a problem with clearing the way, kid. The commander's calling the shots here. You should just say, 'Yes, sir,' and follow orders." Chung Yung barked angrily, drawing the attention of the other company commanders to this exchange. "I hate being told what to do by the likes of you. You guys there." Roots stood up, chin jutting towards Mannings. "You guys are just happy to die if that high and mighty there orders it, huh? Disgusting. If I'm gonna die, it'll be on my own terms, not because someone ordered me to. That's how the military works. It's an organization. Once you've enlisted, You're a cog in the machine, Chung Young retorted. Well, I'm not having it. If you guys are so eager to die, go ahead without me. Watching this exchange, Mannings felt a growing sense of crisis. Not only was Roots causing trouble with his own mobile suit squadron, but with other commanders as well. Discord at such a critical juncture would be extremely problematic. I won't let any of you die. Rest assured, Mannings thundered. The primary assault in this operation, the fleet's annihilation, will be carried out by the Superior, Plus, and Phos Gundams. Each mobile suit company will engage the enemy mobile suits deployed around the fleet in standard formation. The operation will commence at 1000 hours on the 13th Earth Standard Time. I wish you all the best of luck. While grappling with the issue of Roots and his team, who had become a problem for the entire mobile suit companies of the fleet, the operation proceeded to its scheduled time. Dawn broke on the 13th, an ominous day in Western superstition, seemingly foreshadowing ill fate for Task Force Alpha. On this day, at 0400 Earth Standard Time, the A.E.U.G fleet, having departed from the shoal zone in L1 after establishing contact with the new Decides, took on a spherical formation and arrived in lunar orbit, leaving a thin, elongated trail of propulsion light. This was a fatal strategic error as the two fleets converged before Task Force Alpha could reach lunar orbit. The two assault landing ships in A.E.U.G's fleet pointed their massive thrusters toward the surface of Ayers City spaceport, spewing out huge explosive tongues of flame as they began a slow descent at a steep angle, their bellies full of mobile suits, including Jin's. It's an optical signal from the Bull Run, a watch officer on the bridge reported to COD, identifying the small approaching light as the Kilimanjaro. It's Admiral A.E.U.G. The small flickering light gradually took the shape of a battleship in the vast expanse of space outside the bridge windows, and A.E.U.G's flagship, the Bull Run, appeared. The Bull Run positioned itself on the port side of the Kilimanjaro. Crew members rushed to the port side windows to catch a glimpse. Lieutenant COD, it's been a while. Since the last war, right? As the voice from the laser communication resounded on the Kilimanjaro bridge, A.E.U.G saluted. COD remembered receiving a unit commendation directly from A.E.U.G during the 1-year war. I brought a little gift for the Ayers City militia and the new Decides. And, of course, new weapons too. At that moment, it became clear that with the arrival of the A.E.U.G fleet, Task Force Alpha alone stood little chance of turning the tide. March 13th, 0100 Earth Standard Time. From the bridge of the Pegasus 3, space looked alive, filled with fireflies dancing in the void. Every mobile suit of the fleet, led by the S Gundam, had been dispatched. Most of them were Neros. Out of the entire mobile suit forces on the fleet, 1/3, 15 units, were left as the fleet's direct defense, while the other mobile units headed toward the region where it seemed the new Decides fleet had deployed. Their mission, obliterate the enemy fleet and secure the Ayers City before the arrival of the A.E.U.G fleet. To achieve this, half of them, 15 mobile suits, were equipped with landing devices designed for lunar descent. Of course, they had no idea of the fate awaiting them. The first tragedy befell 112th Squadron's 9 Neros. One of the lead Neros suddenly bloated grotesquely before detonating. What the... Blinding blue-white beams crisscrossed the Nero squadron, marking the beginning of a deadly showtime. Is it an ambush? There must be at least 3 squadrons here. Where are they shooting from? The Neros were instantly plunged into chaos, angry shouts flying over squad channels. In an instant, something whizzed by, and 2 Neros exploded one after the other. The pilots thrust into the oxygen-deprived hell without knowing who or what had attacked them. As the flames of life extinguished, brief flashes of brilliance blossomed. The 112th MS Squadron literally disappeared in a matter of minutes. If someone had observed this scene from a distance, they would have seen a shower of light falling intermittently from various directions before the blossoms of light appeared. Amidst the wreckage that once was the 112th Squadron, a blue mobile suit emerged, its body covered in white markings, reminiscent of tribal tattoos. Its visage was that of a fierce deity, unmistakably a Gundam. Two small disc-like devices swiftly returned to the shoulders of the Gundam, locking in place as its eyes glowed with an ominous glint. The secret project, the new equipment GI, also known as the G5. Within the Federation forces, it was formally designated the Gundam Mark V. An INCOM system, huh? Excellent. Its pilot, Cod, mused, licking his lips. The 112th MS Squadron has been wiped out? What? On the Pegasus 3's bridge, the squadron's IFF signal suddenly vanished from the monitor. Did they get ambushed? The enemy has already finished deploying? No, it can't be. Thoughts of the worst scenarios flashed through Heathrow's mind. If it was an ambush, there had to be a considerable number of mobile suits working as a guerrilla force. The A.E.U.G city militia wasn't this formidable. The conclusion was clear. It was the A.E.U.G fleet. We're in trouble. Instruct all units to divert their invasion routes. Now, Heathrow shouted, jumping to his feet so abruptly that his captain's hat floated away in the zero gravity. It's no use, sir, the comms officer replied, voice tinged with defeat. Comms jamming is in full effect to maximize the surprise attack. As the officer's words echoed through the bridge, faces turned ashen, and a tangible dread settled over the crew.